This time last year, we had Shedeur on the show. He was excellent.
Yeah.
We really liked him.
It didn't help. It didn't help in the draft when you had him on the show last year this time. It didn't help. So you probably was one of the one that killed him. Did you sabotage my son? Because it didn't help.
I tried my
and nothing
best.
you did
I tried my best to
You
help.
just told me he was kind, he was wonderful.
He shook everybody's hand.
Yeah.
I tweeted it.
But you didn't tell that to nobody.
Yes, I
you
did.
kept
I
it a
tweeted
secret.
it. Went viral.
Nobody saw it.
I don't know. But anyways, yeah, whenever we sit down and talk, then they're like, whoa, like, you're cool, bro. Like, you're not how the media portray you to be. So that's they understand like how realistic and how humane I am. Rather than just reading headlines or different stuff that people seen. So I'll be open. I'm saying ask any question you want. I really don't care.
Shedeur was fantastic last night. I'm rooting for him to succeed in the NFL, but this is a little too much here, right? This is just a little too much. Last night after the game, Nike drops an ad, only a matter of time with the caption, when you get your opportunity, create your next one. I get what they're doing. They probably hit their social media impressions and engagement goals last night because this went off. But the bottom line is, save this for when he wins a regular season game. This is the kind of stuff why people don't like Shedeur. It's not Shedeur himself. He's a good kid. He's a good role model. He's a good quarterback. But people trying to boost him up like this for a preseason start is why we have issues and why people want to see him fail.
Yo, I need you to think about the worst timing imaginable. The absolute most painful, most expensive, most publicly documented case of wrong place, wrong decision, wrong week that any NFL front office has ever experienced in the history of professional football roster management. An NFL team just rejected a Shedeur Sanders trade. Looked at the offer, evaluated the asset, ran the numbers through their models, had internal conversations at the ownership and front office level, and decided, formally, officially, on the record internally, that Shedeur Sanders was not worth what was being asked to acquire him. They passed. They moved on. They felt good about the decision. And then the same week, the same 7-day calendar window that will now live permanently in the organizational history of that franchise as the most expensive 7 days in their front office's existence, Shedeur Sanders announced a Nike deal that sent shockwaves through the entire sports business world and made every number that team had put into their Shedeur Sanders asset valuation model look like it was built with a calculator that was missing half its functions. The regret that followed was not subtle. It was not manageable. It was immediate, comprehensive, and so publicly visible that the franchise's own fan base started asking the questions that nobody in that front office had a good answer for. Let's get into every single layer of this story right now.
Now, we ultimately know what happened last year. Shedeur Sanders got snubbed in the draft. Now, there was many narratives painted about Shedeur. And one being that he was, wearing headphones in the interview, that he was too arrogant. All of these different said things that was happening. What happened after? Cleveland media painted him out to push their own little narrative. Now, Shedeur never said nothing. Now, it's crazy to me.
When I say I like Shedeur, I mean I like Shedeur. When I say I want to see more from Shedeur, I genuinely want to see more from Shedeur. But me coming on the radio and then saying, like, guys, we can admit this. Like, Shedeur had some moments last year. There were some positives, but he did not do enough to make the Browns know, like, definitively, that's our quarterback. And when teams don't have that answer, I think it's totally understandable that they would always go out and be operating in a way where it's like, how can we upgrade this position? You know what I'm saying? That's just how NFL teams think. That's how this team is operating. They're going to look at what's out there and they're going to say,
all right, full context from the very beginning. Because to understand the full scope of the regret, the specific, nauseating, organization-wide regret that this franchise is living with right now, you need to understand exactly how the trade rejection happened and what framework they used to arrive at the decision that is now being second-guessed by every person inside that building. The trade conversation started the way most quarterback trade conversations start at this level, quietly, through back channels, agent to front office, intermediary conversations that give both sides the ability to explore interest without committing to anything public until the parameters are clearly understood. The organization received communication that Shedeur Sanders was potentially available, that the right offer, structured the right way, could move this situation forward and land one of the most talked about young quarterbacks in professional football in their building. The front office did what front offices are supposed to do. They evaluated. They pulled their internal data on Shedeur, the game film analysis, the combine metrics, the performance tracking from his professional starts, the statistical modeling that their analytics department uses to project quarterback development trajectories. They ran the compensation ask through their draft capital models. They had conversations about how the acquisition would affect their salary cap situation and what it would mean for other roster priorities they were managing simultaneously. And somewhere in that evaluation process, somewhere in the rooms where these decisions get made by people with significant experience and significant resources and access to more data about NFL player performance than any previous generation of front office executives has ever had, they arrived at the conclusion that the price being asked for Shedeur Sanders exceeded what their models indicated his current and projected value justified.
On the board and talk through plays and things like that?
I was able to just verbally talk, though.
Okay.
Yeah, verbally talk, that's it.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, yeah, it's my bad. But when you talk ball with these coaches, do you feel like that gives you an opportunity to shine?
Nah, because they understand I know football. You know, they could tell by the progression year after year after year after year from Jackson State to Colorado, and they could tell each year, okay, what have I grown at? So I don't think it's ever a question about my football knowledge.
They passed. The decision went up to ownership. Ownership signed off. The rejection was communicated back through the appropriate channels, and the franchise moved forward with their existing quarterback plans, feeling like they had made a disciplined, data-driven, analytically sound decision that protected their draft capital and their cap structure for the right opportunity at the right price. That was the decision, made by smart people with real data, applied through a legitimate evaluation framework, arriving at a conclusion that seemed entirely defensible in the moment it was made. And then, Monday of the same week, or Tuesday or Wednesday, the specific day almost doesn't matter because the proximity is what makes it devastating, the Nike deal dropped. Let's talk about what Shedeur Sanders' Nike deal actually represented in the context of that trade rejection. Because this is not a standard celebrity endorsement situation, and the front office that passed on the trade needs to understand, and apparently did not fully understand when they were making their decision, exactly what kind of commercial asset they were evaluating. Shedeur Sanders and Nike. This was not a shoe deal. This was not an appearance agreement. This was not the standard wear our product and show up to some events arrangement that fills athlete endorsement portfolios at every level of professional sports. This was a comprehensive brand partnership, the kind that Nike reserves for athletes they have identified through their own rigorous commercial analysis as generational assets with the kind of global reach, cultural resonance, and long-term trajectory that builds shoe lines, shapes brand identity, and generates revenue streams that compound over careers rather than peaking in a single commercial moment. Nike's athlete evaluation process is not sentimental. They do not sign players because of narrative or hype or the compelling nature of an underdog story. They sign players because their commercial intelligence team, which is as sophisticated as any sports business analytical operation in the world, has concluded that the athlete in question represents a return on investment that justifies the partnership structure being offered. When Nike puts a comprehensive brand deal on the table for a young NFL quarterback, that deal is the output of a process that involved more data, more market analysis, and more rigorous commercial projection than most NFL front offices apply to player personnel decisions. The team that rejected the Shedeur Sanders trade had access to their internal analytics. Nike had access to theirs. The team's analytics said the price was too high. Nike's analytics said the opposite, said it loudly, said it in the form of a partnership structure that made the sports business world stop and pay attention when it dropped. And the fact that those two analytical conclusions arrived at the same asset in the same week and came to completely opposite conclusions about its value tells you something very specific about which room did their homework more thoroughly.
Bro, like it's like social media, so it's about insights, it's about clicks, it's about like a lot of different things. Can you even be mad that that's what they want to do? You can't be mad because that is their job description. Right and wrong, is for them to judge within themselves, you know, and that's between like them and God.
Did it make an effect? Did it make it to the locker room where they're like,
no, bro, that's what I'm saying. If you know me, anybody out there that been.
Watch what is happening inside that franchise in this window. Because the sources describing the internal atmosphere say it is unlike anything they have witnessed in that building in recent memory. The Nike deal is running on every screen. Every sports business outlet is covering it. Every NFL analyst is connecting the dots between the commercial validation Nike just provided and the trade rejection that happened days earlier. And the people inside that front office who signed off on passing, the analytics team that built the models, the executives who ran the evaluation, the ownership representatives who approves the final decision, are sitting with a very specific and very uncomfortable awareness that the most credible commercial analytical operation in global sports just publicly disagreed with their conclusion in the most visible way possible. That is not a comfortable position for any front office to occupy, and the discomfort is compounded by the fan base reaction, because NFL fan bases are not always sophisticated about the technical details of trade compensation and salary cap management and draft capital value frameworks. But they understand very clearly when their team passed on something and then watched that something immediately become significantly more valuable and significantly more validated than the team's evaluation suggested it was. And they are asking the question that the front office has no satisfying answer for. Why did we pass? Sources say the internal conversations in the days after the Nike deal dropped centered on a very specific question that nobody in that building had a comfortable answer to. The question was not whether the trade rejection was defensible based on the information available at the time. The question was whether the evaluation framework they used to reach that decision was built to capture the full scope of what Shedeur Sanders represents as an asset. Not just the football player, not just the quarterback making reads and throwing completions and managing games. The complete asset. The commercial footprint, the brand trajectory, the cultural resonance that translates directly into franchise value when a player of this profile is wearing your team's jersey and your team's logo is attached to every Nike moment that follows.
Like, you don't have to do that, you know, because everybody's in position to do it for itself. So I'm just thankful for it, you know. So that's why I'm just happy, you know, whenever Dan said he gonna get something. Like he said, I could drive his Escalade, so I ain't gotta get one now. So I'm like, you know, I'm taking everything free in life right now.
Let's go.
From my family. Anything free in life from my family, I'm taking.
Period. Shut up, Pops.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate you for coming by as always.
Appreciate you, Hey, take it.
Because here is the reality that this Nike deal just made impossible to ignore. The NFL is not just a football league anymore. It has not been just a football league for years. It is a media and entertainment and commercial ecosystem where the players who generate the most attention and the most commercial interest create value for their franchises that extends far beyond what any performance-based player evaluation model captures. In a franchise that evaluates a quarterback trade using only the football metrics and the draft capital math without building the commercial asset value into the calculation in a serious and rigorous way, is going to keep arriving at the wrong answer about players who sit at the intersection of football talent and cultural impact. Shedeur Sanders sits at that intersection. He has been sitting at it since before the draft. Every major commercial entity that has evaluated him seriously has arrived at the same conclusion. The Saudi PIF partnership, the Nike deal. Every major commercial entity that did the complete analysis rather than the partial analysis has come back with a number that says this asset is worth more than a conventional quarterback evaluation framework suggests. The team that rejected the trade did the partial analysis. And the Nike deal just showed the entire league what the complete analysis produces when you actually do it. Here is the thing about Shedeur Sanders that the regret in that front office should be teaching everyone watching. The criticism that has followed him, the prove it at the professional level energy, the small sample size qualifications, the organizational uncertainty that has been a recurring theme of his early career, has been the NFL establishment's way of applying conventional quarterback evaluation to an unconventional asset. And unconventional assets break conventional models. That is what makes them unconventional. The models that produce accurate valuations for standard players systematically undervalue the players who exist outside the standard distribution. And Shedeur Sanders has been outside the standard distribution since the moment his name entered the professional football conversation. Nike knew it when they built their partnership structure. The Saudi PIF knew it when they structured their deal. Every major commercial entity that did the complete analysis knew it, and the team that rejected the trade, using a model that apparently was not built to capture the complete picture, is now sitting in the most expensive classroom that professional sports management offers, the one where the lesson arrives in the form of a Nike announcement that runs on every screen in your building the same week you passed on the asset it just validated. Shedeur Sanders did not need that team's validation. He never needed any specific team's validation. He needed the right situation, the right organizational commitment in the right moment for the combination of his football talent and his commercial footprint to operate at the level both of them are capable of reaching. The Nike deal is just the latest confirmation that the moment is arriving regardless of which teams are ready for it and which ones passed. So here is what I need from your comments, and I want real, informed takes on this one, because the question has genuine substance beyond the drama. Do you think NFL front offices need to fundamentally change how they calculate player asset value to account for commercial footprint and brand trajectory alongside football performance metrics? Or do you think the Nike deal and the commercial validation are consequences of football performance? And if Shedeur proves himself on the field, the commercial numbers take care of themselves without needing to be part of the trade evaluation? Because those two positions have completely different implications for how the next generation of quarterback evaluations gets done. Drop your answer and tell me, when this team faces Shedeur's new franchise for the first time and watches him perform in a Nike uniform in a stadium where his name is on every commercial, every billboard, every broadcast graphic, what is going through the mind of every person in that front office who signed off on the rejection? Because that moment is coming, and the answer to that question is going to be written all over their faces. An NFL team rejected a Shedeur Sanders trade using every analytical tool available to them and arrived at a conclusion that Nike's commercial intelligence operation, using their own analytical tools on the same asset, immediately and comprehensively contradicted in the same week. That is not bad luck. That is not bad timing. That is a model failure. A framework that was not built to capture the complete value of a complete asset being applied to the most complete asset in the current quarterback landscape. The regret in that building is real. The lesson is expensive. And Shedeur Sanders, who has been the most consistently undervalued and most consistently revalidated asset in professional football for the last 2 years, is just getting started making the people who passed on him wish they had done the math differently. Watch what comes next. If you want every update as Shedeur's Nike deal reshapes his commercial landscape and his new organizational chapter begins, every development, every new partnership, every performance that makes that trade rejection look more expensive by the game, hit that subscribe button right now. We do not miss a single moment. We stay ahead of every story. We always ride with Shedeur, and we always ride with the truth. Let's go.